Again? Why? It's bad.
Yes. What was that?
Bad, why?
Crikey. She's getting punchy. What was wrong
You
with
just said do it quickly, so we just do it quickly.
Can you please do it again?
Okay. Coming up, who just got the largest job in global media?
Hearts and Science launches in the UK.
Yep. And in the US, Omnicom offer a zero margin deal to one of US's largest advertisers. Hi and welcome to IDCom's Media Snack, episode 43. Today there's a really interesting theme, I think, running through everything we're going to talk about, and it involves the world's largest advertiser, Procter & Gamble. First story is that they've hired a new global media director for the first time in about 5 or 6 years, which is big news.
That's right. Procter & Gamble's media agency in the US, Hearts and Science, are about to launch in the UK.
Yep. And within the same group, Hearts and Science as well, it's an interesting story from the US where they've won the McDonald's business, apparently on a zero profit margin agreement. So we'll dig into that. All coming up on Media Snack in just the time it takes to eat a sandwich. Okay, so first up today, we've spoken a lot in recent weeks about the whole chief media officer, about perhaps the absence of really senior media leadership within brands. News broke yesterday that P&G, the world's largest media spender, which is over $7 billion a year they spend on media, have actually appointed now a new global media director kind of in that mold. And unsurprisingly, and typically like P&G, they're really pioneering now clearly in that space and have brought in a big name to run media globally, and that's
Gerry D'Angelo. So Gerry was the European media director at Mondelez.
Yep.
And yesterday it was announced that he has been appointed as global media director for Procter & Gamble, responsible for the world's largest media budget, 7.2 billion. He will have guardianship of their new US agency, Hearts and Science, and will be responsible for a massive team of kind of media leaders. Very much positioned as this kind of chief media officer. The last person that held that position, I think, at Procter & Gamble was Bernard Glock, who left in 2009. So it's been a long time coming, but I think, as you said, Procter & Gamble have made the running and have made a massive statement of intent when it comes to how important media is within their organisation.
Which I mean, you can tell just by the scale of that, investment that they make in media. 7 billion is over 10% of their global sales, not their profit. It's actually their global sales. So, I mean, clearly this is a business that understands that media is a driver for business. So that it has to be highly accountable. And I think it's interesting now that they've got that leadership from externally. Why have they hired externally? Because they're notorious for, generating talent from within P&G.
I'm not sure. I think obviously talent. So they've identified in Gerry a global media leader that fits the profile of the kind of the governance role that they want filled in that position. They've just got a new agency. It's all about data and analytics, and Gerry, ticks those boxes, and it's going to be a brilliant role for him to fill, but a really big one. Yeah.
So I mean, we wish you all the best of luck. We're looking forward to seeing kind of what impact that might make.
So next up, and continuing this theme of P&G, P&G's US agency, Hearts and Science, is launching in the UK. Now, Hearts and Science is one of Omnicom's newest agencies. It made all the news by picking up P&G in the US as its founding client. Most recently, it won AT&T in the US. So combined billings just through two clients is about 6 billion.
Yeah, which puts them at the top of the new business tables in the US in a matter of months, which is quite impressive.
By some distance. Now, they have just announced they are launching a UK operation.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, big news. I mean, if you remember, Hearts and Science, it didn't exist. I mean, it was created as a result or through the process of P&G pitching their US media, which had been with Publicis for a long time. They cut ties with Publicis, moved their entire, I think, $2 billion US media into a startup operation under Omnicom. and that business was designed around the needs of P&G. Now, launching in the UK, obviously see that as an interesting opportunity. They've made their first big hire, big announcement, which is that Francis Ralston Good, who has been in the Omnicom group over here, who we know well, as kind of strategic leadership within PhD and then broader across the group. So a really good leader, I think, for that business. But coincidentally, happens to be happening at a time when Procter & Gamble happened to be pitching their UK media business, apparently. And so these may be coincidental things, but given that Hearts and Science was designed around the US P&G business, it perhaps be a good bet that Hearts and Science UK may be being built around the requirements of the UK P&G business, which is worth £200 million account, one of the largest in the UK. Okay, before we just move on to the next story, just wanted to let everybody know, we've just released the latest in our series of kind of investigative surveys. This time we're looking at the training of media, both within brands and agencies. It's a survey which we do on a quarterly basis. There'll be a report that comes at the back of it. We'll link to it. Please just take 5 minutes, fill in the survey. In return, you'll get an advanced copy of the report. And we're focusing on training, which I think has been identified as a massive gap by the ANA in the US, that there's not enough media knowledge particularly within brand organisations.
Right. And it's about understanding what capability gaps there are moving forward to enable both agencies and internal media resources to fulfil not only the existing requirements of brands, but also their future-facing ones. Something, obviously, that Hearts and Science have kind of seem to be cracking quite nicely.
Yeah, good. So if you've got a point of view on capability and training, please take 5 minutes, click the link below, and look out for the report in a month or so. Okay, lastly, so continuing this theme of kind of disruption and innovation, it's been really interesting to observe, again, Hearts and Science in the US, or Omnicom, their parent company, winning business on what has been reported as a zero margin deal. And what we mean by that is that they've agreed to work really at a break-even point, and their profit margin generated only through the success of the client, in this case McDonald's. And what that means is that the KPIs of success for the Omnicom agencies involved, which includes Hearts and Science, are dependent on some brand equity and sales numbers for McDonald's. And that's the only way that they can unlock profitability, which is kind of interesting.
So, I mean, what makes this, I think, particularly unique and interesting is that, I mean, there's nothing new about having a performance-related incentive program linked to an agency's remuneration. But generally speaking, the metrics of measurement of success are within the agency's control. Okay, so whether they deliver against their trading or how good their service and strategy delivery is. And normally, the business metric is a relatively small part of the overall makeup of that PRIP. In this case, it is in its entirety. So the only way that the agency can make a profit is if McDonald's business moves forward. And I think that is incredibly brave. Now, the lady that is in charge of this new McDonald's agency is ex-Coca-Cola, a lady called Wendy Clark. And so Coca-Cola, for a long time, pioneered value-based remuneration. I'm sure she was at the very heart of that as a philosophy internally at Coca-Cola. And so she will know acutely how to manage that as a remuneration structure. And she will have gone into this with her eyes wide open. I think it's a brilliant statement of intent on behalf of that agency. They are properly in. A huge partnership, I think, will have been established through this process. And I think it's a really interesting, progressive way of establishing a trusting relationship with your client.
And and that's the word. The key word is trust there. There has to be, because as an agency, you have to have huge trust and faith in your advertisers, in your clients' ability to push those metrics. You've got to believe that you can affect some kind of change. You've got to kind of trust them. And there's also, there has to be a huge amount of trust from the client side onto the agency. I mean, particularly when we look at media, for example, because media is going to have to be bought at a zero margin, and entirely transparently in order for this to work.
Yeah.
So the client in this case have to be 100% convinced that the agency can activate media totally transparently, and that the group can only see an upside in focusing on the in the client's business, not on any other incremental margin that they might make in the media business. So huge trust required on the client side as well. Okay, that's all for this week. Please do the survey, click on the link below. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.
Have a good weekend.